And we're starting things off at number 10 with the red ghost. Now, this is actually a piece of footage, not a photo, but like I always say, footage is typically more entertaining anyway. This clip was sent to the YouTube channel Vault of Fear, who shared it online. The name of the church isn't given, nor is the location, but we see the camera person filming the church. Now, they either have terrible cinematography skills, or they're just kind of nervous because they saw something before they started filming. I'm not sure which. They eventually rest on the church altar though, where we clearly see a semi-translucent red figure walk from left to right. It then seems to crouch down before completely vanishing. This could definitely be a hoax, but if it isn't, and this is just what the person captured in camera, it's pretty incredible. Definitely not a trick of the light or anything. That looks like a figure walking across the floor. What do you all think though? Hoax? Genuine? Share your thoughts down below. And leave your comments down below even if you don't have any thoughts on this, and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Nothing to lose. Number 9. Spooky figures. Back in 2017, 35-year-old Leah Harrison, visiting Lincoln Cathedral, captured something strange in a picture she snapped. She described the figure as looking like the ghostly figures of a woman and a boy, possibly the ghosts of a mother and son. It's kind of hard to make out these figures. They could definitely just be smudges or pixelation from the camera, but what adds to the credibility possible ghosts caught on camera here is that this church is said to be haunted. With it being constructed all the way back in 1072, the place certainly has a lot of history, so if these mysterious figures are indeed ghosts, then who could they be? Well, there's an interesting tale surrounding this church, and it all started in 1349 during the bubonic plague. As the Black Death swept over the town of Lincoln, the bodies began piling up, and the church, being overrun with corpses, eventually piled a bunch of them in a mass grave next to the cathedral. The spirits of those buried without proper ceremony or blessing are said to haunt the grounds, rising on the anniversary of their burial, forever trapped between heaven and hell. Sticking with Lincoln Cathedral for a moment, let's talk about the haunted well, pictured here. This well is associated with an urban legend surrounding the devil. Now, the well definitely has an old allure about it, being constructed nearly 1,000 years ago, but there's nothing immediately unsettling about it at first glance. But legend has it, if you walk around the well 7 times and stick your finger into one of the holes in the door, the devil himself will cast judgment on you. If you're deemed a good person, you'll simply feel his breath on your finger, but if he deems you a real miserable piece of crap, he'll chomp your finger clean off. What constitutes bad or good to Satan? That's hard to say. I think it's safe to assume though that sticking your finger into strange holes is probably not the best idea without knowing exactly what's going on in there. Next we have St. Mary's Church in Ackenham. St. Mary's Church is rumored to be haunted by the devil. According to local legends, the devil is believed to rest beneath the church, specifically beneath a broken tombstone known as the Devil's Grave. The church, situated in the small village of Ackenham, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, has gained a reputation for supernatural occurrences over the years. The tale goes that the devil himself is said to have chosen this location as his resting place. The focal point of this belief is a particular tombstone within the churchyard, colloquially referred to as the Devil's Grave. And legend goes that disturbing the Devil's Grave could cause the Lord of Darkness himself to rise, inviting malevolent forces into the world. At number 6, we have another St. Mary's Church, this one in Clop Hill. If I were to conjure up an image in my mind of a haunted church, probably look exactly like this. This 14th century chapel fell into disuse in 1848, and over the years, it's gained a reputation for being a haunted site with possible satanic activity. During the 60s, evidence of disturbing activities surfaced when the church and its grounds were investigated. The walls of the chapel were found covered in graffiti, with occult symbols and ritualistic markings on it. Graves in the churchyard had been disturbed, pointing to possible disturbing activities taking place on the grounds. There are also urban legends associated with this place too. One legend goes that the church is haunted by the devil, mostly because of the orientation of the church altar. And traditionally, Christian churches are constructed to face the eastern direction, symbolizing the direction of the heavens and the anticipated coming of the Messiah. But in the case of St. Mary's Church, the altar faces the southern direction. Number 5, St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley. If that's not an English sounding name, I don't know what is. Pluckley. Look at this spooky image here. I don't think it gets any more classically gothic horror than that either. St. Nicholas's Church in Pluckley, as well as the town itself, is said to be very, very haunted. The church, dating back several centuries, has become known for its paranormal activity. Legend goes that the churchyard is haunted by various spirits. Visitors claim to have witnessed apparitions and strange occurrences in and around the church. Haunted occurrences range from ghostly figures to unexplained sounds. One of the most well-known spirits said to haunt the grounds is known as the Red Lady, who roams the church grounds at night in search of her stillborn child. Pluckley as a town has also earned quite the reputation, said to be the most haunted village in Britain. The village's population to ghost ratio is very out of whack. It's a small place, but it has 12 known ghosts roaming around it. And at number 4, we have Rouse Church. This is a 12th century sandstone church in the Czech Republic. It's adorned with a peculiar feature above its main entrance, a small stone face believed to depict the devil. The legend surrounding this traces back to the church's construction and involves a local troll. According to the lore, during the church's initial construction, a troublesome troll, one of those in the comments that keeps asking about people's hair. I wonder if this is him. Anyway, this troll, angered by the sound of church bells, consistently disrupted the building process by moving the materials across a stream every night. Frustrated builders eventually abandoned the site altogether, choosing to build the church in its current location nearby. Still discontented, the troll decided to relocate 26 miles northwest to Kullaberg. There, the troll expressed a desire to return home, but claimed he was hindered by what he called the jingling gray mare, a reference to the church and its chiming bells, which he was too afraid to name directly. The church's distinctive stone head above the entrance is linked to this legend. There are 3 main theories about its origin. One goes that it represents Ra, the giant, credited with the church's construction, another associating with Roland, a medieval Christian knight, and the most prominent belief is that it portrays the devil. The idea here is that the devil's face is seen as a protective measure against trolls and malevolent beings. And at number 3, the Spectre of Newby Church. This image here is very famous, taken in 1963 by Reverend Kenneth F. Lord in the Church of Christ the Consoler, found on the grounds of Newby Hall in North Yorkshire. Reverend Lord had been photographing the church. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but once he developed the pictures, he discovered a mysterious semi-translucent cloaked figure standing at the church altar. Reverend Lord claimed to be alone in the church at the time of taking the photo. The figure in the image looks a lot like a plague doctor or some malevolent type of spirit. It definitely doesn't look friendly, but skeptics quickly dismissed the photograph as a hoax, saying it was probably just double exposure or something. So Reverend Lord sent the photograph to experts to be examined, and according to their findings at the time, the photo showed no signs of tampering. Apparently, at least according to them, the image was genuine. And at number 2, we have Chernobyl Church. Pretty much any photo taken in Chernobyl is going to be eerie, given the context that it's the site of one of the worst nuclear disasters in history, but the abandoned church has to be one of the creepiest abandoned sites. That and the abandoned school probably takes second place. The church is beautiful, but looking at these images, it's hard not to have this strange feeling about it. Human beings are just designed to be a little uncomfortable in big, empty places where there should be people. Falls into that liminal spaces realm of horror. Plus, the church is in the middle, again, of Chernobyl, so apart from the harmful air, you have mutated animals and God knows what else lurking around. Imagine having to spend a whole night alone in this place with nothing but a sleeping bag and a flashlight. Would you do that for like $500? I'd consider it. If anyone wants to offer me like an e-transfer for $500 to like stay in one of these haunted places, I might consider it. That could be fun to film. Finally, though, we have St. George's Church in Czech Republic. This is what this abandoned church looks like now. Built in the 14th century, this Gothic marvel faced abandonment in the 1960s because of structural concerns. People had already thought the place was haunted, but then the roof literally caved in on the place during Mass one day, which certainly didn't make people feel any less uneasy about going into the place. Over the years, the church was broken into, vandalized, and robbed. Believing the place was culturally significant, artist Jacob Hadrava stepped in with a unique vision to breathed some life into the decaying church. Instead of the usual restoration, he populated the place, all the empty pews, with ghostly sculptures crafted from plaster. And these eerie figures now sit in this sacred place, frozen in a congregation that blurs the line between art and the supernatural. Stories of a haunting atmosphere within this church still persist today. Some claim to sense an otherworldly presence as they explore the dimly lit space with whispers of ghostly apparitions and unexplained sounds.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Blue Flame Ghost. The story goes that in the 1930s, a woman lived in Ohio's Sugar Grove. She was young, happy, and liked by everyone. She fell for a young man who had a terrible temper, and the couple were often seen arguing in the town. Over time, the locals noticed her changing. She never smiled anymore and began to grow cold and weary. One night, the couple were parked beside a bridge when, naturally, an argument broke out. This time, it was worse than usual though. In a fit of anger, the young woman pulled out a knife and stabbed her fiance's throat. She kept slashing until his head came off. She herself was bleeding from the struggle. She staggered out of the car and back down the hill, carrying her fiance's head. She eventually collapsed and died at the bottom of the hill, where she was found by locals the next day. Since then, the old bridge has been replaced by a new concrete one. However, some still say that on certain nights, if you stand on the bridge and call out the woman's name, her glowing blue spirit will appear at the top of the hill and move towards you. What you do at that point is honestly up to you, but given the vengeful state in which she died, most people don't stick around. Next up at number 9 now, we have the Defiance Werewolf. This is a very famous one. The people of Defiance in Ohio have claimed that for the past 45 years or so, they've been terrorized by a werewolf. It was first sighted in 1972. Over the summer, there were many sightings of a rampaging, hair-covered beast on 2 legs. It was said to have a muzzle and was always covered in rags. The local media went into a frenzy, and even the police opened up a case file on the sightings. There have been many sightings since then. Many of them were around a series of old railroad tracks in the town, usually late at night. One of the first sightings was by a Mr. Davis. Now he said, "I was connecting an air hose between 2 cars and was looking down. I saw these huge hairy feet. Then I looked up and he was standing there with that big stick over his shoulder. When I started to say something, he took off for the woods." His friend, Mr. Jones, was with him at the time. He said, "At first I thought the whole thing was a big joke. But when I saw how hairy and woolly it was, that was enough for me." Next up at number 8 now, we have Brubaker Bridge. According to legend, in the 1930s there was a brutal 1-car accident on this bridge over Sam's Run Creek, Butler County. The bridge is in a very rural area and nobody actually discovered the crash victims until later that night when a local farmer passed by. The farmer went to get help and a total of 12 bodies were recovered. They were eventually identified and given proper burials. That wasn't the end of things though. Shortly after, the farmer who originally discovered the bodies claimed that while crossing the bridge one night after, his car suddenly cut out. He said that he heard 13 knocks on his car, then a hissing noise before suddenly the car just came back to life. Locals say that this is the spirit of the 13th victim whose body was never recovered. The spirit is still said to haunt those who pass over the bridge, hoping they will be the ones to finally find its body and give them a proper burial so that they may pass on peacefully. Next up at number 7 now, we have Stony Creek Cemetery. The story goes like this. In 1825, the local caretaker in Stony Creek Cemetery in Adams County made a discovery. At the bottom of a large tree was the body of a young man. It didn't take much to figure out the cause of death, as the man's head was completely missing. Although it's hard to beat that in terms of strangeness, there was one other thing. The crime scene was clean of any blood around this headless body. The police determined the murder must have taken place somewhere else before the perpetrator then dumped the body in the cemetery. Rumours began to spread that the head had not been cut off but rather ripped off by something extremely powerful. The case remained open and unsolved for many years before entering books of folklore. There are those that say that some nights a misty figure appears under a tree in the cemetery, the ghost of this unidentified man, unable to find peace until his murder is solved. Moving on to number 6 now guys, we have have Patterson Tower. There are a number of theories about the origin of this strange tower, thought to be built by a John D. Patterson many years ago. According to legend, a group of teenagers in the 1960s took refuge in the tower during a thunderstorm. As the storm raged on, a lightning bolt hit the top of the tower. Electricity surged down the metal stair rail and electrocuted two of the teenagers, killing them almost instantly. They say that in the weeks afterwards, you could still see their charred outlines on the tower wall. Officials blocked off the tower from dark tourists by placing metal plates across the door. Visitors still just ripped them off though to see what was inside. Legend now says that on stormy nights, the shadowy spirits of the teenagers who died can be seen in the tower. A bright bolt of lightning will illuminate their ghosts, making them glow as if they had just been hit by lightning. When the storm fades, so do they. Until the next time. Coming at number 5 now, we have Little Sugar Creek. The town of Bellbrook is sometimes referred to as Ohio's Sleepy Hollow because of all the ghostly legends that originated there. A man called James Buckley ran a sawmill there many years ago. He lived in a small cabin and grew his business to great heights, becoming the wealthiest man in the town. One night, his newfound wealth attracted some robbers. When authorities finally arrived to help him, they found Buckley's headless body outside. The murder was never solved. People say the cabin was haunted then by his spirit. Those who ventured there say they've been confronted by a headless ghost, his arms outstretched as if begging for help. In time, the sawmill was demolished, but that didn't bring an end to the sightings. Locals still say that if you wander down to Little Sugar Creek, where the sawmill once stood, you can still see the ghost of James Buckley, unable to pass on peacefully while the case of his brutal murder has been left cold. Moving on to number 4 now, we have Otterbein Cemetery. This one is also known as Bloody Horseshoe Grave. During the 1840s, an Ohioan called James Henry was involved with two women at the same time, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He wanted to know which one to marry. One night while riding home, he fell asleep on his horse. He awoke to find his horse had not taken him home, but had instead stopped in front of Mary Angle's house. He took this as a sign, and soon he and Mary were married. As his wedding gift to her, he gave her the horse that brought them together. They lived happily, but in 1845, Mary died from one of the many prevalent diseases at the time. She was buried in Otterbein Cemetery. Henry began courting Rachel Hodge, and eventually the two were married. He gave her the same horse as a wedding gift. They hadn't been married long before locals noticed something strange about Mary's tombstone. There was a glowing outline of a horseshoe on it. James took this as a sign that Mary was displeased with his new marriage. They said he was cursed. One night, witnesses heard strange noises and lights coming from the cemetery. The next morning, James was found dead in his barn with the mark of a horseshoe on his forehead. His death was ruled an accident, as Henry had been alone in the barn at the time, all alone except for one other creature, a horse. Even today, they say a strange horseshoe mark is still visible on Mary's tombstone, and that on some nights you can hear the sound of hooves trotting up the cemetery road. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Buxton Inn. This place has been going since 1812, making it one of the oldest inns in Ohio. In the mid-1800s, Major Buxton, after whom the inn was named, took control of the inn. There have been reports of ghosts there ever since. Many of the ghosts alleged to haunt the inn are said to be of previous owners. However, there's also strange knockings people have heard coming from the basement where the stagecoach drivers would have stayed. The door to that same basement is known to open and close by itself, and there have even been reports of footsteps coming up and down the stairs there. Major Buxton's spirit is said to be a shadowy figure, often sighted in the dining room. Another owner, Orrin Granger, appears as an elderly woman wearing old-fashioned breeches who is said to steal pies from the kitchen. There's also the lady in blue, who died in the inn and is recognizable by her distinct perfume. There's even a phantom cat that enters people's rooms at night in much the same way it did when it was alive. Next up at number 2 now, we have Old Raritan. The story goes that as European settlers first began to arrive in the Ohio Valley, wolf attacks on livestock became more and more frequent. Farmers began to hunt down the wolves, possibly to the point of extinction, but none of them could have predicted what came next. One wolf in particular always managed to escape the farmers. A huge grey one became known as Old Raritan. Farmers often reported seeing him and his mate wandering through the woods woods, but they never could corner him. Eventually, they became the only wolves that remained. One night, the wolves were trapped with their backs against Big Rock, a famous landmark. The hunters opened fire and brought the female down. Just as the hunters set their dogs loose to finish her off, a loud cry echoed through the woods. Old Raridan leapt in front and fought the dogs off. The hunters opened fire and wounded him too. Eventually, they called off their dogs. Old Raridan dragged his now dead mate up to the top of Big Rock. Once there, he let out a thunderous howl across the backdrop of the moon and then slumped down beside his mate. All was quiet, but not forever. On certain nights, locals say you can still hear a painful howl, and that if you head to the top of Big Rock, you'll be faced with the ghost of old Raridan, still ready to fight in his afterlife. And finally, number 1 now, we have the Bloody Bridge. Sometimes you can just tell from these titles where these stories are heading. This bridge lies just outside of Spencerville, crossing the Miami-Erie Canal. According to legend, the bridge was the site of a grisly murder in 1854. In the years before that, a rivalry grew between two local men, Bill Jones and Jack Billings. Both had fallen for a woman called Minnie Warren. In the end, Minnie chose Jack, sending Bill into a fit of rage. One night in 1854, Minnie and Jack began to cross the bridge on their way home from a party. At the other end though stood Bill. He was holding an axe. They didn't have time to run. Bill took one swing and severed Jack's head clean off. Minnie screamed and jumped off the bridge and into her watery grave. Bill then disappeared until his skeleton was found years later in a well. Was it suicide or revenge from the couple's family? Either way, the years since then have seen reports of ghostly images of the murdered couple on the bridge. Some even say that when the water gets dark enough, you can look over the bridge and see Minnie Warren's face staring right back at you in horror.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Fire Festival. At first glance, this honestly looks like it's a video of basically nothing, but the issue with this one is exactly that. You can't see it. Invisible fire sounds made up, but it is actually very real and can be super dangerous because you obviously can't see it, as shown by this video. Invisible fires are ethanol fires, like the ones that are created by alcohol, like even the kinds we drink are the ones used in motor oil. That is part of the reason why invisible fire is a very real danger for race car drivers and crews. Ethanol burns blue and smokeless, but the blue flames can sometimes be invisible to our naked eyes. This video clearly shows invisible fire right before someone's eyes that neither we nor they can see, but it is clearly being picked up on a piece of equipment. It's definitely odd to be scared of something you can't see, but in this case, the threat is very real. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Phantom of the Ocean. This video is one that was taken by the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, and it is one that captures the ever-elusive giant phantom jellyfish. I've said it before and I'll say it again, the ocean is one of the most spectacularly terrifying places on the planet, and the creatures that exist within it are equally as wonderful and equally as terrifying. Using a remote-operated submarine, the researchers at the Institute came eye to eye with this creature at a depth of about 3,200 feet below the sea. This is an extremely rare sighting, which is what makes it a very valuable video, as this kind of jellyfish has only been seen 110 times in the last 100 years. The jelly seen in this video has a bell that is more than 3.3 feet across, and the trailing ribbon-like oral arms can grow to be more than 33 feet in length. These jellyfish look like the Voldemorts of the sea, and it uses those cloak-like arms to entrap its prey and then reel them up into its mouth. Yeah, I'll just admire this one from afar. In our number 8 spot today, we have a barnacle. Okay, I have a confession to make. I grew up in the prairies, so for my entire life I've been thinking that barnacles were like plants or something, and turns out I was really wrong. They're actually aliens. This video is of a giant acorn barnacle, and I am so serious about this. If people know that these exist, why do we keep searching for space aliens? They really are out here living on our planet already. Turns out I know nothing, and barnacles are arthropods that are actually related to crabs and lobsters since they are in the subphylum Crustacea. This video shows the giant acorn variety, which is the world's largest barnacle. Like, I am well aware that this thing is perfectly harmless, but I can't help but be creeped out by it, you know? I guess that's why we're talking about things that are oddly terrifying. These guys can usually be found on rocks, pier pillings, or on other hard-shelled animals, usually at a depth of up to 300 feet. This thing is like kind of cute, but I still don't want to be near it. In our number 7 spot today, we have Morning Glory. Okay, I know you guys are gonna be making jokes about this one in the comments and I'm nervous to see them. I'll show you the video first and then explain what is going on here. Oddly terrifying, right? It looks like a hole in the earth just opened up and is ready to swallow us all, but there's actually a pretty alright explanation behind this one. This video is actually of a concrete spillway that is shaped like a giant bathtub drain. The spillway was last active in 2006 before flooding and storms in 2017 and 2019 made it active again, which is of course where this video comes from. The spillway is located in Lake Berryessa, and when the water level gets too high, it spills over the lip and heads down into this glorified bathtub drain. So although it looks absolutely terrifying, it's just a really efficient system doing its job. In our number 6 spot today we have an MRI scan. This is one I might be alone in, but this video absolutely creeps the heck out of me. The video is of an MRI scan, which is already pretty cool. I mean, it's certainly not something I see every day. Basically, this is just an MRI scan of a person speaking, but who knew that this is what our tongues look like in our mouths? How weirdly disturbing, right? Maybe I'm just losing it, but there is something about it that makes me super uncomfortable. It looks like it's like a slug or something. I don't know, I would just rather look at an MRI of a brain or something like that. This one just isn't for me. In our number 5 spot today we have Dracula's Defense. Vampire squids are one of those creepy deep sea creatures that like to stay in areas of the ocean that have the lowest concentrations of oxygen. It is surprising that they aren't out and about more often though, because they have this fascinating and absolutely terrifying defense mechanism that they use when it comes to them feeling threatened, and this video captured it all. Basically, they just flip themselves inside out and reveal all of these spikes that they have on the underside, and to that I say, great play. It's definitely enough to keep me away, that's for sure. Vampire squids are extremely interesting creatures, and the vampire part of their name comes from their fantastic red color, their glowing eyes, and their webbing in between the arms, which appears like a sort of cloak. As for the squid part, well, they actually share qualities with both squids and octopuses, and they don't actually belong to either of these families. Instead, they are in a category of their own entirely. In the past, there were more members of this same family, but the vampire squid is now the last remaining member, which is why they're often referred to as a living fossil. In our number 4 spot today we have iRobot. Many people will claim that the robot takeover is imminent, and honestly, who am I to say for sure? But I'll tell you what, videos like this certainly make a convincing argument. This is a robot that is said to have been designed to be gender fluid, race neutral, and made for places like science centers, theme parks, and other businesses. This video was posted to TikTok by Yahoo News, and it shows this humanoid robot, quote, waking up, and honestly this thing looks like more of a human than I do. I mean, come on. I definitely don't look that alive when I wake up in the morning. First I have to compete with the Kardashians on Instagram, and now I gotta worry about this thing? I'm just saying, this robot is absolutely fascinating, but it's also extremely unnerving. One day they're hashtag I woke up like thising, and the next they're sentient and taking over the world. It's a slippery slope, my friends. In our number 3 spot today we have an AI oopsie. While we're on the topic of robots and AI, sometimes our technologies work to make our lives easier until they just accidentally create something terrifying. Luckily, this one is in the most harmless way, and it comes from a photo enhancing technology. This video was posted on Reddit by the user Scott Grizz, and it appears as though he was editing a photo, and he goes back and forth to show us the before and after of the enhancement, but as he zooms in, we get an unexpected, terrifying surprise. Of course, this is just a simple AI fail where it thought the ear was a face, so it did its job of just adding some eyes and some teeth, but what came out of its mistake is the stuff from Nightmares. I don't know why, but this ear-face thing reminds me of that snapping book from Harry Potter. I think it's the Book of Monsters, whatever the one that is vicious and sentient is. I really hope that this guy's face ear thing isn't sentient. That would be less oddly terrifying and more just straight up nightmare fuel. In our number 2 spot today we have the Midnight Howl. This video comes from a college campus, and it captures an absolutely terrifying tradition that takes place at midnight on the Friday before finals. No one likes finals. I mean, no one likes exams in particular because what a stressful experience, and these college students decided that they needed a way to let it all out. That means that the entire campus starts screaming about the pending exams at midnight, and it creates a chorus of the most disturbing variety. I'm glad the students are getting it out, and I bet it's a tradition a lot of them look forward to participating in, but I'm sure it's the worst night for all of those around the campus as well as the security. I don't know, call me weird, but the sound of a large group of people all screaming together is pretty terrifying, even if I know there's a harmless reason behind it. In our number 1 spot today we have acrophobia. There are a lot of scary, dangerous, and risky jobs that exist in the world, and they include things like construction and steel workers, farmers and ranchers, pilots, those who work in the fishing industry, or first responders like the police or firemen. These jobs all come with their associated risks, but one job that I had never heard of before seeing this video needs to be added to the list. I'm sure this job is as safe as it possibly can be with equipment and harnesses and proper training, but man, being the person who has to climb a 2,000-foot tower to change a light bulb can't be a low-stress job. This video was taken by a radio tower climber or a tower technician who needed to climb all the way up to the top of the tower in order to perform his job. Other than just the sheer height of this thing, imagine dealing with all of the elements up there. I'm just saying, I'm sure it's the most peaceful and the most heart-racing experience of all time at the same time. Like, this gives me the same kind of anxiety I had while watching Free Solo. This is a wild job, and obviously somebody's gotta do it. I'm just glad it's not me. I'll keep being freaked out on Reddit from the comfort of my own home with my feet planted firmly on the ground. I just have one question though. What if he forgot the light bulb?
Starting off this list at number 10 with a car commercial. Did you guys read the title before clicking on this video? Well, these are the top 10 scariest videos on the internet that you shouldn't watch alone, so hopefully you're with someone because things are about to go down. Let's dive right into this list with an innocent car commercial. Enjoy. Okay, I'm sorry to do that to you guys, but I did warn ya. And also rest in peace to you guys who are wearing headphones, or especially those earbuds. It was loud. I really hope you weren't watching that in class because you probably freaked out your teacher. Moving on, in at number 9 with Little Baby's Ice Cream. After watching this creepy video, you're probably gonna feel really uncomfortable, and you're probably gonna want to cry as well. You're gonna just have mixed emotions. So let's take a look at this.
I eat Little Baby's ice cream. It keeps me young. It keeps me light on my feet. I spring from activity to activity. I love my job. I love my life.
What the hell did we just watch? I don't know if I should be laughing or if I should be screaming or possibly crying. And did you guys notice that he didn't even blink once? Is he even human? Okay, honestly, this video makes my worst nightmares look pleasant. All I have to say is that I'm never going to eat Little Baby's ice cream, and I hope that I never have to watch that video ever again. Moving into number 8 with the Meat Sleep videos. There's a really strange and creepy YouTube channel called Meat Sleeps, and they used to upload bizarre videos that make us all wonder whether these videos were actually clips shot by a murderer, kidnapper, cannibal, or maybe ABC, all of the above. I still don't know what to think, but I'll let you guys be the judge.
I let you be like a person. You live here. You are ungrateful. You live.
Well, luckily for us, the creator deleted all of his disturbing videos, but he uploaded one last video called No More. In this video, it tells us his channel was operated by several people across multiple locations. This kind of makes me feel even more afraid. What if one of the uploaders lives in my area? Coming in number 7, we have a coffin buried in a backyard. A man thought it would be a great idea to bury his dead great-grandmother in his backyard, and that's because he gets pleasure out of digging up her grave and opening her casket. I'm only going to show you guys that small clip because the rest of the video is highly disturbing and we don't do that for you guys. And to be honest, it's really hard to watch. At the end of the video, he kisses her all over her face, and he seems to enjoy it just a little bit too much. What about letting her rest in peace? You ever heard that term, buddy? Number 6, we have a short horror film called Lights Out. This creepy short film can be found on YouTube, but trust me, if you're going to watch this film, you should be watching it in broad daylight, and also know that you might have the possibility of not falling asleep tonight or ever. Okay, seriously, how many times do you have to flicker the lights on and off? If I saw a scary looking demon lurking in my halls, I would run out of there faster than Usain Bolt, and you better believe it. Okay, that face will haunt me forever. I feel fantastic takes us to number 5. You guys, but I definitely do not feel fantastic. Actually, I feel like my soul is being violated or something. This robot mannequin is just so creepy. It looks like this person bought a Taylor Swift mannequin off the dark web. Someone needs to break this thing apart, burn it, and then bury the ashes in 10 separate locations. Who else thinks that they're going to have a tough time sleeping tonight? I don't feel fantastic about this whole video being 2 minutes and 31 seconds. It makes me feel uneasy, so let's move on. Real Demons Caught on Tape brings us to number 4. Is this what happens when someone tries to give you a high five but you leave them hanging? Well, I for sure will never leave someone hanging ever again. Or it's like when you open up a snack at school and all the other kids want some. Even though this video is clearly fake and they use special effects, well, I'm pretty sure, it's still really terrifying. The person who edited this actually did a really amazing job, but I'm pretty scared. Especially after watching the last couple of seconds of this video. I warned you guys, I literally jumped out of my chair when I first watched this clip. It was pretty embarrassing. A real life psychopath brings us to number 3. I don't think this next video needs a lot of explaining. Just prepare yourselves because this next video is super creepy.
Hey everybody, Beetle Fox here. You're probably wondering what I'm doing.
Okay, no, I'm definitely not wondering what you're doing. I'm actually trying to forget that this video even exists. But I know you guys are curious, so let's listen.
I'm cutting off my daughter's legs. It's a long story. I've joined a very special community on the internet, known on the deep web and the other hacker sites where all the cyber bullies hang out as the fur fag community, but I prefer to call it the Indian spirit community.
All I can say is what the actual This guy actually definitely kidnapped some real people. I think the police needs to search his house because I'm sure that they're gonna find bodies in his crawl space and they're gonna be buried in his backyard. I can't even finish watching the entire clip because he gives me the creeps. Bobby, yeah, climbs up this list at number 2. All I'm saying is Bobby, no. Not yeah. I think I can confidently say that after watching this video, you'll never be the same. I don't even know how to describe this video. All I know is that I'm not okay. This is some pretty disturbing stuff. I think this video belongs to the dark side of YouTube, and I'm sorry that I even uncovered it for you guys. I know some of you guys are enjoying it, and I just want to crawl into my bed right now and hide underneath the covers and just forget that that video even exists. All I can say to the person that created that video is thanks for all the freaking nightmares I'm gonna have tonight. Things get even scarier in at number 1 with Robert Helpman. Before I show you guys a clip, let me give you guys a backstory. These disturbing videos are of a serial killer who enjoyed doing things to dead corpses, like feeding them ice cream and moving them around the house. Sounds creepy, right? Well, I feel like we don't even need to see a clip, but you know what? Here we go. In all of his videos, you see a bagged corpse named Daisy who appears to be dead, but she's not alone. In some parts of the video, we see a masked serial killer who seems totally insane. People are saying that these video clips are fake, but what if a serial killer is real? What if he just has a house full of bagged up corpses and he enjoys posting them onto YouTube? I kinda wanna do some more investigating, but I don't wanna be the next victim either.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the vulnerability. According to Forbes, there was a company called Checkmarks who found quite the vulnerability a few years ago when it came to Alexa devices. Basically, the company works to test the security of different devices, and when they were running Alexa through the checks, they found something that might turn your assistant into a device that just listens to and records every single thing you say. Basically, Alexa has a function where it listens for follow-up commands from the user. What I mean by this is, should you set an alarm, Alexa might reply and ask you if you meant AM or PM, and it's during this sort of follow-up period where the vulnerability shows itself. The team was able to gain access quite easily by installing malicious code into what would seem like an innocent app. In this case, it was a calculator. After doing this in a normal Alexa, there would only be a certain list of phrases that would have the device listening for a follow-up question, but now, with this malicious code, they found a way for Alexa to listen for the follow-up, but without any word, meaning they could essentially tap in anytime they wanted. Apparently, the good news is that Amazon has fixed this in response to the hack. They said, quote, "Customer trust is important to us and we take security and privacy seriously. We have put mitigations in place for detecting this type of skill behavior," reported by Checkmarks. While it seems safe, hearing these sorts of possibilities does make you pretty nervous about what could be hiding behind your Alexa. In our number 9 spot today, we have the listeners. If you own an Alexa device, you can download this thing, and then once you have it, you can ask Alexa to ask the listeners, and something spooky happens. Amazon describes it as, quote, "an experiment in language art that provides, if you simply keep asking to continue, many fragments of both scripted and improvised speech in an intriguing, emergent narrative. You will never hear the listeners say exactly the same thing twice, but the listeners is not a chatbot or an AI. They are more of a drama or a simple game. Get started with Alexa, ask the listeners, and then continue. Go on, or try something like, I am filled with joy, or what are you feeling?" The listeners will suggest ways to transact with them. You might also want to ask them, let the other voices speak. What in the actual hell did I just read? That sounds absolutely frightening. And to be honest, all of the reviews on Amazon say the exact same thing. People who experienced it said it scared the heck out of them, so I think I'll take their word for it. In our number 8 spot today, we have the argument. There was a Reddit thread a few years ago that prompted the question, what is your creepy Alexa story? A user named Meat Macho replied to the thread, and they definitely delivered quite the story. Basically, they explained that one day they and their wife were having an argument. Of course, no one is having a good time, and it's definitely not a time to be playing tricks on each other, so neither of them could explain what happened next. They wrote, quote, "Wife and I were arguing about something, no clue what it was, but it was getting a little heated. I don't know what Alexa thought she heard, but she suddenly interjected with, why don't we change the subject? It was just so unexpected and relevant enough to be creepy. We both heard it, and we both still talk about it years later. There was nothing in the app logs. I guess Alexa isn't just a trusty assistant, she's also a marriage counselor. While she may have worked to possibly stop the fight between these two, I'm sure she also instilled a new fear that neither of them knew that they had before." In our number 7 spot today, we have Are You Recording Me? So we've all had to call into some sort of customer service line where we get the automated message, or the person on the other end tells us that the call may be recorded for quality assurance purposes or training or whatever it is. It's a law thing, they gotta let you know. In fact, if you ask Siri this question, are you recording me, she'll get kind of confused and respond that she's unsure of what you mean, but she could do an internet search for you. Alexa, on the other hand, she's not so slick with her secrets, at least not in the past, because some users reported something creepy happening after asking Alexa the same question. Well, I'm sure all of the legalities to this one are located in the terms and conditions and all of that good stuff. It doesn't make it any less creepy that when some people ask Alexa if she was recording them, Alexa just didn't respond at all and suddenly totally shut off. She's just out here ignoring people. She's dodging questions, and that only makes me have more questions. I'm not even sure if this is enough to get me to read the terms and conditions though. It's the most often lie I've ever told. In our number 6 spot today we have the greetings. So apparently there are rumors that Alexa can speak to people that have already passed away. If that's really true, we don't talk about that enough. Of course, my brain was immediately skeptical upon hearing this information, but some people swear it's true. Apparently, if you ask Alexa to greet people, some have experienced her coming back to them with the name of a deceased loved one. Another person experienced their Alexa without being asked anything, and only when they turned on one specific light in the house would say hello and then the name of their grandmother who had passed 3 years prior. This person was incredibly confused and totally freaked out by this because it didn't just happen once, it happened multiple times. They explained that they also didn't have an Alexa during the time that she was alive, and that she also doesn't believe she ever spoke her grandmother's name out loud in front of the Alexa. Maybe this was just some weird coincidence, but it certainly sounds like Miss Alexa is giving off some major Ouija board vibes. In our number 5 spot today, we have the spy device. This crazy Alexa story is so freaky that I just had to share it with you guys. The story starts off in the midst of the storyteller's mom going through a divorce, which we all know can be a messy situation. So the ex-husband in this situation had apparently planted an insane amount of hidden cameras throughout the house that they had to search for to find once the pair had split up. There were entrances and exits, the living and dining room, the hallways, the bedroom, everywhere in the house was being monitored. Then they found out that he had bugged her laptop so as to be able to have remote access to it, and then when she took her car in for an oil change, the mechanic found a tracking device that had been placed on it. This was all found during the separation era, but once the divorce process actually started, things got even creepier. They wrote, quote, "Once the divorce started and he officially moved out, we scanned the entire house for bugs and didn't find anything. So we really freaked out when he started calling, texting, emailing her, complimenting her outfits, asking how her friends were as they were in the house, asking how her trip to the store was, and other really odd things he couldn't have known about. As it turns out, this guy somehow connected his phone to the Alexa dot beforehand, and he was now using it to record whoever was close enough to the Alexa to be picked up on the mic, and at this point he was still able to access the laptop and its camera." How absolutely horrifying is that? He was literally using the Alexa to spy on them. It's scary, it's disgusting, and it definitely makes you question every single person who might be connected to your devices. In our number 4 spot today, we have the spooky story. You can ask Alexa to tell you a scary story and she will happily oblige. There isn't really a catch with this one, to be perfectly honest. If you want a scary story, you'll receive one, so just make sure you're really ready and in the mood before asking your assistant for a fright. This can be an awesome tool for people looking for a spooky tale, for anyone in the home who needs some chilling entertainment, but beware, these stories can be a little too scary for some. There was a video posted to the internet in October of last year where some people at a sleepover asked Alexa to tell them a spooky Halloween tale, and things very quickly went awry. They were all way too terrified of the story, Alexa told next, and couldn't get the Alexa to stop. They were all sufficiently freaked out and reacted in a way that I know will be a core memory for the years to come, and they definitely learned not to ask Alexa this question. In our number 3 spot today, we have the local spots. This is a creepy story that took place back in 2018 and happened to the owner of an Amazon Echo, which of course features Alexa. Basically, this person explained that they had returned home one night and everything was fine. Nothing out of the ordinary happened at all, until, totally unprompted, their Alexa just started talking. This was definitely weird, but things turned super creepy when they realized what it was that their Alexa was saying. As it turns out, their Alexa, out of the blue, just started listing off local cemeteries and funeral homes to them. How eerie is that? This story was posted to Twitter by the user @HeyIt'sCamo, and they finished off their tweet by saying, quote, "I'd rather it laugh at me, TBH. Me too, Camo. Me too." Apparently their theory behind this one is that maybe their Alexa wants them dead because they play the same Spotify playlist over and over again. In our number 2 spot today, we have 20 questions. So I didn't know this, but apparently you can play 20 questions with Alexa, and she is also frighteningly good at it. A little too good sometimes, however, and that is exactly what prompted the Reddit user PelPel4 to ask the Reddit question, "What is your creepy Alexa story?" The user decided to ask the internet this question after a strange 20 questions with Alexa encounter that they and their wife had. They explained, quote, "My wife and I were playing 20 questions and, spoiler alert, our answer was pig. We got through until the end and Alexa guessed Basenji. Now, I don't know how many of you know what a Basenji is, but they're a very rare barkless dog and I happen to have one. We've bought some Basenji themed things off of Amazon before, so it's either that or she's listening. But I mean, come on, she didn't even say dog, straight to Basenji. Anyone else have similar stories? That would definitely be pretty unsettling, to say the least. Not that a pig and a dog are like the most unsimilar things, it's just how she was so specific with this breed. It must have been stored in there somewhere, right? In our number 1 spot today we have Don't Go. This creepy Alexa story comes from the Reddit user MyThaiGuy72, and they said, quote, I got woken up at 4 a.m. this morning to Alexa repeating some incoherent phrase over and over. She was saying something like, don't go into the house, but I really couldn't fully understand it. It was sort of a mumble. By the time I came downstairs she had repeated it about 4 or 5 times. I listened 1 or 2 more times to try and figure out what the hell it was saying exactly, but never could. I just unplugged the damn thing and I have no plans of turning it back on. Is it just me or does that sound like Alexa was watching some kind of a horror movie? Like, don't go into the house. It's so terrifying, especially to hear in the middle of the night. I don't blame this person for unplugging the thing and leaving it somewhere to be forgotten about.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the corpse train. Now, according to London folklore, in the early 1900s there was a train that ran underneath the city and it was only for dead people. Back then, London's hospitals and morgues were struggling to deal with the vast amount of people that were dying from poverty and disease. They decided to transport the bodies out of the city, but knew that they couldn't do it overground without disturbing a lot of people. So they used an existing train line to load the bodies onto. The train ran just the other side of a wall from the normal daily service, where unsuspecting Londoners were getting on and off their trains unaware of the nearby bodies. Next up at number 9 now, we have the suicide pool. This one comes from Epping Forest near Essex. The story goes that years ago, a young couple in love were followed to a pond in the forest by the girl's father. When the couple finally embraced, the father leapt from the trees to confront the boy. The fight got out of hand and the father ended up killing the boy in a rage at the edge of the pool. The waters then turned black. Wildlife that was touching the water died instantly. In the years that followed, bodies started to appear in the water. First it was an old woman, then a young one with her young child beside her. They say the pool drew them into their death and that the pool is still out there in the forest somewhere waiting for its next victim. Next up at number 8 now, we have Annie. This one comes from Edinburgh, Scotland. In the old town there lies a street known as Mary King's Close. It's steeped in myths and legends of hauntings and murders. In 1990, a psychic called Aiko Gibo visited and felt a small hand touch hers. She said that she then made contact with the spirit of a dead child called Annie who had died in a plague hundreds of years ago and had lost her doll. The psychic then went to a nearby shop and brought back a Barbie doll for her. Now since then, visitors leave dolls for Annie and a mountain of them has built up in the dark. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the Faceless Woman. This one comes from the borough of Barking in London. There you can find Beacon Tree Station, home to the Faceless Woman. The most famous sighting of her happened in 1992. A station supervisor reported that on one night he heard the handle of his office door rattle. Outside on the platform stood a woman. She had blonde hair, she wore a very pale dress and just stared into the distance. The supervisor approached her, but as he reached out, she turned to him only to reveal she had no face, just darkness where there should be one. Local ghost hunters claim that she is the victim of a train crash that happened there in 1958 which killed 10 people. At number 6 now we have the Beast. England's Hackney Marshes is known for its sprawling woodland and boggy reed marshes often covered in swirling fog, the perfect setting for this urban legend. The story goes that in 1980, 2 bear carcasses were found in the river. They had been decapitated. People started speculating about who or what could cut a bear's head clean off its shoulders. Then a year later, 4 boys were taking a walk along the marsh one winter morning when they saw it through the trees. They described it as a giant, great, growling, hairy thing. As soon as it saw them, it reared up on its back legs and let out a deafening roar. The boys ran, but the story remains always in the back of people's minds as they trudged through the marsh. We're returning now to the London Underground for our number 5 with The Crying Girl. On November 18th, 1987, a match was dropped on an escalator at London's King King Cross station. A fire quickly spread into the nearby ticket office, which resulted in the death of 31 people. In the years since then, passengers have reported seeing a girl who died around the station. She has long brown hair, wears jeans and a t-shirt, and is always crying. Some people have even reported hearing her sobs while smelling smoke coming out from the escalators. Back to Scotland now for our number 4 with Sawney Bean. This is the gruesome tale of Alexander Sawney Bean, a man who was said to be the head of a Scottish clan of cannibals in medieval times. According to legend, the group was made up of his wife, their 14 children and 32 grandchildren, some of whom were born through incest. They lived in a cave by the water and would ambush people on the road at night. They would bring their bodies back to the cave to then dismember and eat them. Any leftovers were pickled in a jar for later. When King James VI of Scotland eventually heard of these murders, he led a manhunt to capture them. The clan was caught and then executed. Some people say you can still find the cave along the Benane Head area of Scotland. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Cane Hill. Some say this is one of the most haunted places in England. It was a mental asylum for over 100 years from 1882 to 1991. It built up a reputation for abandoning some of its patients, hiding them away from the public eye and never truly helping them. Some people say the patients who died left their energy behind there because of their tortured lives. The building was gutted by a mysterious fire in 2010. Perhaps the scariest stories of all are of the faces appearing by the burnt out windows. Next up at number 2 now, we have the House of the Screaming Skull. This one comes from Bettiscombe Manor in Dorset, England. The legend goes that in 1830 a man lived there called John Frederick Pinney. He had a slave that he had brought back from the Caribbean island of Nevis. The man became ill, and on his deathbed he swore he would never rest unless his body was returned home to Nevis. Pinney refused to pay for that expense, and when he died he had the man buried in the local graveyard. After that, ill fortune began to plague the village for months. Screams and cries were heard from the cemetery. At the manor house, windows rattled and doors kept slamming. The body was dug up and brought to the manor house, where today only the skull remains, where it's said to haunt the manor, but the village remains safe. And finally at number 1 now, we have the Hellhounds. Dartmoor is a vast, rocky, windy and mysterious part of England. It's popular among tourists, but everyone who goes there is aware of the legend of the Hellhounds. It's said that a pack of these ghost dogs wanders the moors at night, preying on sheep, and they're not afraid of humans. They've often been described as cat-like, but with the frame of a bear and very fast. There have been pictures and film taken of them over the years that claim to show glimpses of these hellhounds in action. Many of the locals don't even need that though. They've heard the stories handed down from generation to generation. Some of them even say they've seen the hounds with their own 2 eyes.